You're feeling sleepy. Your eyes are like lead. Just relax. Just relax. You're going under. You're feeling sleepy. In this episode, we ask if hypnosis can help you improve your English. And what is NLP? And how can it help you improve your English? We'll also give you some app recommendations if you're taking part in conference calls online. Welcome to
Aprender Inglés con Reza y Craig.
Hi, I'm Reza.
And my name's Craig.
And with nearly 50 years of teaching between us, we'll help you improve your English and take it to the next level. How are you, Craig?
I'm fine, thank you. Look into my eyes. Look directly into my eyes. You're feeling sleepy. Your body is heavy. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. I'm fine. We're not feeling sleepy. Obviously, we're just mucking about. We're fooling you because our topic is hypnosis. You're not sleepy, are you, Craig?
No, I'm not sleepy. I'm feeling fine. I'm ready to go with this week's podcast. If you're a new listener, you're very, very welcome. And if you're a regular listener or even an AIRCaholic, not alcoholic, AIRCaholic, Aprender Inglés con Reza y Craig, AIRC holic, welcome back this week. First, we have a voice message from Kevin from Colombia.
Hey, Rosen Craig. My name is Kevin. I am from Colombia and I am 20 years old. I want to give you the congratulations because you are doing a really good job because I have learned so much about your job and about your class, and I am so attentive every Sunday to connect my headphones and listen your job and listen your podcast. If really that helps. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kevin, for your message and for taking the time to record your message and get in touch with us. We love hearing from listeners. And you used the present perfect very well in your message. You said, I have learned so much about you. I have learned so much. So good use of the present perfect.
I think, Kevin, you said, listen your podcast. You were probably thinking in Spanish. But in English, you have to add the preposition to something. Listen to a podcast. Listen to a voice.
And towards the end of your message, Kevin, there was some confusion with using the verb help. You can say it really helps. It really helps. That's the third person. The podcast really helps. The audio really helps. And if you want to emphasize that with the word does, it changes the S on help. So you can say it really does help. Just think of that S on the third person help going to does, and then it disappears from the verb. So two possibilities. It really helps with an S, or it really does help.
We have another voice message, this time a little further north from Mexico. It's Carlos Luis.
Hello, Reza. Hello, Craig. This is Carlos Ruiz from Mexico. I would like to say thank you for your productivity and effort in order to give us a very high quality podcast, and I appreciate it a lot. And you really deserve the best thing in this world. Well, I would like to talk about some issues that I have with my listening skills. I think my biggest problem is when I have conference calls, and people have a different accents and nationalities, so sometimes I need to use closed caption app in order to don't miss anything on the conversation. And I have come to think that maybe I have listening problems, so maybe my mind is blocked and I need to unblock it with, I don't know, hypnosis or something like that. And my question is, do you think that the hypnosis works for teaching purpose? I think that maybe it will be a good topic for your podcast. Well, friends, thanks so much for listening, and you are more than welcome in Mexico. Please, if you need a tourist guide, I am available. Best regards.
I would love to visit Mexico. Thank you for your offer. We will definitely be in touch, won't we, Reza, if we go to Mexico when we can travel again?
Yes, it's a place I've long wanted to visit myself, so we might see you there one of these days, Carlos Luis.
Yeah, maybe we'll go together. That would be a fantastic trip.
And your message was really good. And I like your tip about the caption app. The caption app. Now, what's that? It's an app that you can use whenever you're at a conference or on a conference call, could be on the phone, and it basically catches what people are saying and you see the words on the screen. That's effectively it, right?
Yeah, and I've got a couple of recommendations of particular apps that you can use. They're more commonly used, I think, for people who have problems hearing, for people who are hearing impaired, which means they don't hear as most people do. They have problems understanding what they're hearing. We'll look at those in a second. One small mistake you made, Carlos Luis. You said, in order to don't miss. Better to say, in order not to miss. In order not to miss.
You had a very nice expression. You said, I have come to think. I like that. That's a good expression. There's another possibility. You could say, I have come to the realization. It's another way of saying the same thing, but I like that. I have come to think. Craig, any comments about his pronunciation?
One small thing, Carlos Luis, you mispronounced the past tense of the verb block. It's blocked. When you have a k sound, a voiceless sound at the end of a verb, then the ed ending sounds like a t sound. So it's blocked. But you did use the correct prefix. You said unblocked. So the opposite of block is unblock.
And your question, we'll get to that in a minute. Does hypnosis work for teaching purposes? Good question. You've given us the idea for this episode. We'll talk about that in a minute. But first, Craig, you said that you had a few tips to do with caption apps.
Yeah, I got quite interested, so I did a little bit of research, and there are 2 links in the show notes to this episode. This is 324. So to see these recommendations, go to inglespodcast.com/324. Live Caption App and RogerVoice.com are 2 recommendations of speech to text. So the idea is you're sitting in the conference or you're speaking to somebody. Maybe you have difficulties hearing, and as the person speaks, then the voice automatically appears on your mobile phone as text. So you can listen and read at the same time. And those 2 apps are well recommended on the internet. And more generally, I found a list of conference call software because these days we're not physically going to conferences. We're doing a lot of virtual conferencing, and there's quite a good reference list of online software that you can use which has accessibility enabled, which means if you are hard of hearing, if you have problems understanding things, or even if you're blind, this software has different functions that will help you with your disability. So there's a link to that article with the recommendations in the show notes. So what do you think, Reza? Can people learn a language by using hypnosis?
In a word, no, I would say. But it can help. I think it can probably help in the sense that it can relax you. And the more relaxed you are, the better you're going to be at anything in life. Not just learning a language, but learning anything or just simply enjoying life. So I'm sure hypnosis can create a favorable atmosphere for you to learn a language. I would put it like that.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And as Carlos Luis says, sometimes he feels he's a bit blocked and he can't focus and relax sometimes when he's hearing. So maybe hypnosis can improve your focus, relax you, especially if you suffer from ADHD. ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. You find it difficult to focus. You can't concentrate on one thing for a long time. You sometimes feel very anxious and nervous. You suffer from anxiety. Now, this can be because of ADHD, or maybe because of a negative learning experience you've had in the past. If you really had a bad time at school, if you really suffered in your language lessons, maybe the idea of learning English now that you're older brings back memories of bad experiences in the past. And that is something that maybe hypnosis can help you with. However, they still have to work, don't they, Reza? You still have to put in the study time and you still have to work at learning the language.
Yes, if anybody's tried to sell you the idea that basically without lifting a finger, in other words, without making any effort, you're going to learn a language, well, they're lying. We wish it were true. I would love to be able to speak perfect Spanish. Goodness knows I've been practicing long enough, but I still make plenty of mistakes. So I know through my own experience that it's just not true. It's a continual process of learning new things, practicing, correcting your mistakes, probably making the same mistakes again, correcting them again, etc. till hopefully you make those mistakes less often. But there's no quick route to learning a language. It takes time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true. And after Carlos Luis sent us his audio message, he sent a follow-up email saying that he's also interested in NLP. NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And he asked us if that is useful for language learning. What do you think?
Well, I'm not an expert in this, but well, first of all, let me check that I know what I'm talking about. So NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, it's basically connected to psychology, right? It's rooted in psychology.
Yeah, and many years ago it became very popular because it was used in business, especially when in business you have to interact with people, relate to people and do business face to face. There was quite a lot of focus on how NLP can help you to relate better in business.
So what does it actually refer to? It's a very long word, neuro-linguistic programming. What does that mean?
It's a bit scary, isn't it? It's a bit frightening. It sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, but it's the study of the relationships between what we think, our thoughts, and that's where the neuro part comes in, and also our language, the things we say, that's the linguistic part. Also the habits we use and the reactions that help us get through life, and that's the programming. Because normally when you get up in the morning and you go and brush your teeth, you don't make a conscious decision about brushing your teeth. It becomes a habit. You go in the bathroom, you do it automatically without thinking, and there are so many things that we do as a matter of habit, and that becomes part of who we are. So it's kind of the way we're programming ourselves to live our lives. And that's the programming part of NLP.
So can you give me an example of how it might be applied to learning something in a foreign language?
Yeah, say for example, you have your dinner at 9 o'clock every day. And then after dinner, you do the washing up, you clear away the dinner things, and you sit down in front of the computer or the TV and you watch Netflix. And you do that every day to relax. And you do that for an hour and then you go to bed.
So that's your habits you're talking about, your habits, your reactions.
Exactly. So maybe if you decide to change that habit and read an English book for 20 minutes and only watch 40 minutes of Netflix, then you're programming yourself to accept a new habit and improving your English on a daily basis. That's one example of what you could do. That's just part of it though. I remember hearing about NLP when I was studying to be a teacher. Was that part of your course? Do you remember when you were studying to be a teacher? Did that come in? Do you remember? Because I didn't remember exactly how it fitted in, how it connected to teaching. So I had to do some research on it.
Yes, I remember it being mentioned, but like you, I didn't remember much about it. It's not something that you hear about on a daily basis as a teacher.
No, but for example, there is some part of language learning that we can probably identify with. We know that people learn languages in different ways, or that it's easier for some students to learn in one way or maybe another way. For example, some students are naturally visual learners and they learn better when they're looking at text or looking at lists or looking at something on a screen or on their mobile app. And there are some students who are better when they hear the language. They've got a better ear for the language, and they can learn better when they're listening to podcasts or listening to music or listening to an explanation of grammar, for example. So knowing how you learn can help you improve the way you're learning. And that's called the VAC, the VAC, or the VARC model. It's VAC, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, or visual, auditory, reading and writing, and kinesthetic. Those different types of learning. Visual is what you see, auditory is what you hear, reading, writing is obvious, and kinesthetic is moving, because maybe you learn languages easier when you're writing post-it notes and leaving them around the house, for example, or playing games, using a board game to improve your English. That's more kinesthetic because there's movement there.
If you're not sure, test yourself. If you're not sure what type of learner you are, I found a questionnaire online. I've put the link in the show notes, and you answer that questionnaire and it will tell you what type of learner you are, in the sense of, are you more a visual learner? Are you more auditory? Are you more kinesthetic? There's like a VAC questionnaire, or some people call it VARC, as Craig said, VAC or VARC. I put the link online. Try it and see what result you get. You might be surprised. Maybe you think that in the past you've tried to study the language in an effective way, but maybe it wasn't the best method for you. Maybe you focused a lot in the visual aspect, but perhaps it might have been better for you to focus more on another aspect, the auditory or the kinesthetic, the kind of movement aspect. Perhaps that would have worked better for you. So try the questionnaire just out of curiosity, and then see what it tells you about your style of learning.
And just one thing I'll add to what Reza said, and a perfect example, when I learned French at school, it was mostly through textbooks and French grammar tables, verb tables, and I hated it. And I realized I wasn't a very visual learner. I learn better when I hear the language, and when I'm interacting with people and I'm using the language, and seeing the language written in tables I can't connect with it. And I think that is very strongly connected to my experience learning languages at school.
And why is it that babies, children, automatically learn to speak a language without ever really being taught it that much formally? Yeah, you do learn a bit at school, but there are some people who never go to school, particularly in poorer countries where they don't have a great education system, and yet they do learn to at least speak the language. Maybe not write it so well if they didn't get a chance to go to school, but speak it because of their exposure to all the different aspects. They learned that a piece of cheese was called a piece of cheese because that's what people said whenever they gave you one or asked for one. So you pretty quickly learn that that thing that smells and looks like cheese is called cheese, because you'll remember the smell, the look, people writing it, reading it yourself, hearing it, saying it, and it very, very quickly will stick in your mind. You don't really need a teacher for it. So when you combine the different methods, you tend to learn things much better.
Also, I think what many people will probably find when you do the questionnaire that Reza suggested is that you're a mixture of different ways of learning. The important thing is to find out what's better for you and do more of that. So maybe Carlos Luis's frustration and his anxiety is coming from the fact that he's looking at too many verb tables, for example, or studying too many lists, and maybe he needs to focus more on listening, for example. You can adapt your study program according to how you learn more effectively. Moving on to applications of NLP in business, when you're communicating with people, NLP got really successful in business, partly because it made communication more effective. And that included things like mirroring body language. A mirror is espejo, so you kind of copy the body language of the person you're speaking to. And if you watch people sitting at a bar or talking at a restaurant table, very often one person will pick up a glass of wine and the other person will do the same. Or one person will cross their legs and the other person will also cross their legs. And if somebody's gesturing with their hands and moving their hands quickly, maybe the other person does something similar. So that subconsciously relaxes the other person and makes them calmer because they're identifying with the person they're speaking to.
Be careful not to create a negative effect, because it has been well studied. There are papers written on this, that if you normally don't feel very itchy, that means that you feel that you want to scratch, rascar your body.
To fidget
And that type of thing. If you're put in a room with someone who starts scratching, there's a fair chance you will start scratching as well. You wouldn't have done it if you hadn't seen that person doing it. There's many, many experiments proving this. See a person or two or lots of people scratching, and you'll probably start scratching as well, which is not a pleasant thing to do. So it can be negative if you don't use it as well. So as Craig said, mirror positive body language. Yeah? Don't put out negative aspects, because that will make the other person pick up on those negative aspects.
Yeah, all you're trying to do is create rapport, R-A-P-P-O-R-T, creating rapport with the person you're speaking to so that they're relaxed and the communication becomes more effective. And as we mentioned before, you can also create habits, daily habits that help you improve your English. Try to put some strategies in your life on a day-to-day basis that will help you with your English. That could be listening to a podcast for half an hour in bed before you go to sleep. That's a way of disconnecting from watching a screen as well. Or you could have a call 2 or 3 times a week, a phone call or a Skype call with a friend to practice English and make that a habit or routine. So changing your lifestyle and your everyday habits that include something that's connected to English will help you have more success with your studies.
Another useful term to think about is outcome focus. Well, I'm sure you know what the word focus means, what you concentrate on. Outcome really means result. So outcome focus is the idea that you should focus on the outcome, the result of the communication before you start. In other words, ask yourself, what do you want to achieve? Why are you having this communication? Ask yourself. So what are you going to get out of it? What is the outcome? And focus on that. And that might help you choose and use and replicate the right language better to get that result.
And of course, we mentioned the business focus of NLP. This is more focused to business than social communication. When you meet a friend and you speak in English, you don't have an aim to do something specific. However, last week, I had to go.
Can I interrupt there for a sec? Sorry. I'm not sure I would agree with that. Very often, even social conversations do have an aim. You could say less important aims than business, but very often you start a conversation with your boyfriend, girlfriend, And your aim is to persuade them to do something that
That's
you
true.
know they might not want to do, or to persuade them not to do something that you know they want to do that they don't want, that you don't want them to buy something, to listen to you, all sorts of things. So I would say that even in social situations, very often there is an outcome already in mind before you start the conversation.
I agree with you. Maybe it's because I don't normally think of social situations of having a particular outcome or focus, but you're right. You're absolutely right. When I speak in Spanish, if I go to see someone in the bank or I go to speak to a doctor, there's usually something I want from the interaction, from the meeting, and I think about it a lot more. And I might even write down 1 or 2 questions and make sure I'm focusing on the outcome of the meeting. And I do that a lot more outside of my social circle than I do inside the social circle. Like I would never sit down and think, if I went out with you for a drink, why I'm going out and what I need from the conversation. I would just relax and speak to a friend.
It appears like that, but what you want is relaxation. That's what you want. So you're not going to ask me questions that make you think a lot. You know what I mean? If what you want is to relax, that's why you've come out with me for a beer. You're not going to say, Reza, what's your opinion on, teaching the present perfect and the past simple? You're not going to ask me that. You're going to avoid that. If it comes up in the conversation, you might engage a little bit in it, but you're not going to ask me that. If your intention is to relax, you're not going to bring that up in the conversation. So I think even when you meet someone for a beer, there are, albeit means although, albeit very vague, there are intended outcomes. One of those outcomes could be that the conversation just relaxes you. Mm-hmm. So you're going to avoid getting into areas that don't relax you.
And the more I think about it, the more I find myself agreeing with you. For example, if you were to come here, I would think, what's going on? Before you came here, I would think, what's going on in Reza's life at the moment that I would maybe want to ask him about. So that would go through my mind, my head, at a subconscious level. And I think, I don't know if Reza's going to work next month, or I don't know if he's going on holiday, or I don't know what's happening in his flat with his reformer, doing up his flat, whatever. So I would, think about, I'll ask Reza that just to follow up on what's going on in his life. So you're right, it does happen.
I remember, Craig, particularly when I was younger and not quite as terrible looking as I am now, but still no oil painting. Perhaps, the odd young lady might have approached me and said, you're such a nice fellow, such a nice English teacher. We really must meet sometime. And I think, so this sounds great. This is going exactly where I want. Yeah, let's meet. Shall we go for a drink now? No, not quite yet. But let me just first give you this piece of writing. She would say, and could you have a look at this? And then maybe next week we'll meet and talk about that drink. And like a full time and time again, I fell for the trap, and I would have a look at their writing and correct it and give it back to them and say, okay, what about that drink now? And they'd say, oh, well, actually, no, I'm fine. I'm a bit busy now. So their outcome in mind was to get their correction done by me. So they realized if I flatter him, if I compliment him, if I say nice things about him, there's more chance that he will, for free, have a look at my writing and correct it. And you know what? They were right. But that was 20 years ago. I've learned now. I don't do it anymore. But in a way, you could say that they focused on the outcome. They knew exactly how to play me. What do you think?
So they used compliments and they manipulated you. They used you perhaps and manipulated you. Yeah, that can happen. That can happen, definitely.
Yes, and I eventually learned that, the idea that an attractive woman would come over and voluntarily speak to me, there is an intended outcome on her mind, and it's never the same as my intended outcome, never the same one.
So I think the main point here is whether or not it's a business situation, a social situation, it's easy to lose the thread in a conversation. Thread is hilo. Thread. And if you lose the thread, then you lose the purpose of the conversation. So focus on that, concentrate on that. And that is something that also comes from NLP. So thank you very much, Carlos Luis, for your interesting question. We both enjoyed doing a little research on these two subjects. And there's a link to an interesting video in the show notes, which compares neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, with hypnosis. And it's by a famous British person called Paul McKenna. Have you heard of him? What would you call him? He's kind of a TV personality, magician almost.
I think he's a hypnotist as well. I think he originally made himself famous as a hypnotist, but he's since branched out into other areas now.
He's very clever, very entertaining, very interesting. And if you are interested in finding out a little more, go to inglespodcast.com/324 and watch this short YouTube video.
Now it's your turn to practice. Why don't you send us a voice message? If you go to speakpipe.com/inglespodcast, there you'll be able to record your voice and send the audio to us.
Or perhaps you'd prefer to send an email. If you'd like to do that, you can reach me, Craig, Craig, at inglespodcast.com, or Reza's email address, belfastreza, Reza, at gmail.com. We also remind you that you could find courses to improve your English on the Mansion Inglés website. The address for that is also in the show notes. It's store.mansioningles.net.
As always, thanks to all of you who are helping us by supporting this podcast through Patreon. If you're interested, why not have a look at Patreon? That's Patreon, patreon.com/inglespodcast. And you might want to sign up and donate a little bit of money to us, as little as $1 a month. It's completely voluntary. There's no obligation. But with that money, what you will get access to is instant transcriptions of all our most recent episodes.
And we'd like to thank new Patreon supporters who have joined this month. We have one so far, that's Pedro Mut. Thank you very much, Pedro, for joining the program. And again, the address for that is patreon.com/inglespodcast.
Craig, what's on next week's episode?
Next week, we're going to focus a little on some prepositions, in particular, the prepositions in, on, and at, as they relate to time. So prepositions of time next week. Thank you for listening this week. Please stay safe, take care, and we'll see you soon. Until next week, it's goodbye from Reza.
And it's goodbye from Craig.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later. Music also by Kevin MacLeod. The track was Cool Blast. Kevin's website is incompetech.com. Licensed under Creative Commons.